Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live video. Today it is Thursday, the 12th of October, 2023, and my name is CareyHolzman. I am a professional working computer technician. I've been in the industry since 1991, and the goal of my YouTube channel is to bring a level of professional attitude and perspective to what is primarily a .com filled with hobbyists and enthusiasts, at least with regards to tech. There's not too many professionals showcasing their work, and there's a battle, an uphill battle I face where some people absolutely refuse to accept any difference. And there is a major difference between enthusiasts, hobbyists, call them what you will, and professionals. And that has to do with liability, accountability, and responsibility. And by that, I mean, when you're working on your own system, you can take as long as you want. If you screw things up, if you break anything, it's on you. There's it's not belonging to somebody else. If you hire somebody to do a job for you, paint your house, fix your car, you go see a surgeon, you expect to be dealing with professionals and not hobbyists. And regardless, you expect to hold them accountable for any damages or expenses you might have to deal with as a result of their actions, causing you either inconvenience, cost of repair to undo the damage they have caused, and all kinds of potential liabilities that you could be held in a court of law accountable for, that could cause your company to go bankrupt, to prevent you from ever doing that kind of work again, prevent you from even pursuing that potentially as a career. It could really take the wind out of your sails, to take the fun out of it. When it's not fun for somebody else, when you break their stuff or you inconvenience them by taking too long, not knowing what you're doing, learning on the job at their expense, at some point, that will only get you so far before it'll catch up with you, and somebody's going to have enough, and they're going to make sure they're going to do everything they can to make sure you don't do that to anybody else. And welcome to the American legal system. One of my frustrating parts of these videos is every time I try and demonstrate to the audience, there's a portion of the audience that says, I already knew that. There's a portion of the audience that after the live video ends say, oh, well, that was the answer. And if I was in the live video, I would have said that I knew the answer. Now, I'm not saying these people are liars, but isn't it convenient that they knew all the answers after they watched the video? There's something psychologically interesting about somebody who feels compelled to let you know that they knew what the answer was after the video's already described the answer. So we're going to find out if we're dealing with BSers, we're dealing with people with low self-esteem who are looking for the approval of others and just have a poor sense of judgment, or more importantly, whether or not they actually knew what they were talking about. So I'm not going to give you the answer to this problem today. You have to provide me the answer to this problem, and I'm hoping that one of you will give me the right answer. It'd be great if all of you would give me the right answer. I'm going to tell you what 99% of you are going to do. You're going to go to Google. And the problem with going to Google is you need to be very, very specific if you want a very specific, useful response. So in other words, if you type in this generic problem into Google, you're going to get a plethora, a variety of potential causes and solutions. And most of them, if not all of them, will be completely useless. If you say to Google, my stomach hurts, Google might say, have an antacid, drink some fluids, get some rest. And not that that's wrong, but it's not specific to your ulcer or your cancer that may be part of the doctor's treatment that is specific to your condition. and it may include getting rest and drinking water. However, it is incomplete. Now, when we're dealing with a computer in a business, that means the employee that uses that computer, who's being paid by the company to be there to do the work, can't do their work, but their pay doesn't stop. And then the company's paying you, presumably in the IT department, to get these computers for their employees up and running as quickly as possible. The power company, well, the two big power companies here in Arizona, APS and SRP, have thousands of employees statewide. And at any given time, multiple employees are having some kind of computer problem. Access to the server, computer won't turn on, blah, 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 blah. And so they need a full-time, fairly largely staffed IT department to deal with server issues, workstation issues, access issues, giving people permission to access certain things. If somebody's brought on board, they need to assign them an email address and create an account and access. If somebody's in the HR department, they need access to HR resources, such as payroll, perhaps, whereas other employees would not have access to that. If you're let go from the company, your access needs to be revoked immediately. Your email needs to be shut down immediately. This is a full-time job in multiple divisions within the IT department. Not one person does all of it. If you're like me and you're in desktop support, you'll be expected to fix a number of computers as an average per day. So if you're interested in doing this for a living, this is an exercise that will evaluate your skill to determine if you're eligible for hire. Now, a lot of places will do something like this, whether it's in the interview or it's directly after you're hired. And this is to gauge a few things about you. One is your problem-solving skills. But there's also another important, very important aspect, which is, are you somebody that thinks you know everything? And are you somebody that's going to just try every ridiculous answer you can Google until you figure out what works? Are you just going to throw everything at the wall until you figure it out? Because now you're just guessing, you're gambling. You don't necessarily want gamblers as technicians in a business environment. Gambling is something people do for fun. It's not generally what we look for in a surgeon or a professional, generally. So one of the important things that will likely be looked for is to give you an unsolvable problem. To give you a problem where the answer is not within your ability. You'll need something they've not provided you to complete the task. And they're not expecting you to fix it. What they're waiting for is how long it takes for you to realize you need to escalate the call. You need to say, this is beyond my skill set. And this needs to get what we call escalated to a second level to somebody else. If it takes you too long to reach that conclusion, it's not good. I can't tell you what the response from them, the people doing the testing is going to be, but it's not the answer they want to see. So they don't want to see guessing and gambling, and they don't want to see somebody who doesn't know when they're in over their head and refuses to, they've got too much pride, too much ego. That's a problem. We need you to get the job done. If you can't get it done in a timely manner, for any reason, you escalate that ticket, grab the next ticket. Go help the next customer. Don't stubbornly stay on one particular problem that is just eating away at time. That's costing the company money for the employee that cannot work while you are still trying to get their machine up and running. And it's costing them money for your time and labor that they're paying you. And in the meantime, other people are waiting for service, and there's only so many people in the IT department. They want to get through those tickets as quickly as possible. In fact, there's generally something called an SLA, or a service level agreement, that must be met, especially if you work for a contractor. And that usually states something along the lines that every support ticket will be we'll have somebody there to look at it. Maybe not fix it, but we'll at least be there to look at it within 4 hours of that ticket being opened. And on average, we must attain a certain percentage at the end of a certain period of time, a week, a month, a quarter. That's all determined within the contract, that the certain average number of tickets, whatever that minimum is agreed upon in the contract, will have met the 4-hour SLA. And SLA is kind of a political thing, because what it establishes, or what it ends up creating, at least in my experience, is they will hire somebody new, somebody who has no training at all. And when they see a support ticket's getting on 3.5 hours and nobody's addressed it, they'll send the newbie and they say, we want you to go to this location where this computer is, somewhere in the building. It could be a high rise, it could be a campus of buildings. You need to go to this location and you need to take a look at the computer, and then you need to escalate the call. That's all you have to do. You don't even have to try to fix it. You just need to make an appearance, take a look at it, maybe ask the customer to show you the problem, verify the problem, and then say, okay, we need to escalate this to level 2. Service level agreement has been met, even though no real attempt to make the fix was ever truly going to happen, but it meets the SLA. So when you're a new hire, you might be sent to do these jobs where you're confused. Like, why would didn't they hire me to be a tech, but they haven't given me any training and they haven't really showed me around. So I have to find my way around. Some of these campuses are huge. And you're like, don't worry about it. Just figure it out. And the first 2 weeks can be quite intimidating, just because you can get lost in the building. But after a while, you do it enough times, you figure it out. And before you know it, when it says you're in building C5, floor 2, cubicle A7, you're like, oh yeah. And you can walk over there. It's no big deal. So this is the political side of things, right? So that they can meet their SLA. That's important. Second thing is, you never argue with the customer, because if you're working for a contractor in particular, and that customer complains to their boss that you were rude or you smelled, you had BO, that's going to get to your boss. And your boss is going to say, my multi-million-dollar contract with this company versus one employee that could cause us to lose that contract. How do you think that's going to work out for the employee? If you're lucky, you'll get a warning and you'll be told, clean it up, change the attitude. If you come in here with bad hygiene again, you can just take your stuff and go. They are not going to jeopardize their contract because one employee thinks they don't have to abide by the rules of society. It's not part of the employment agreement. So that will not work out well for you for that reason. I mean, it's common sense. So a customer calls me the other day, and this is a real customer computer. And they say, we bought this computer a couple of years ago. One of the employees bought it. This is a small company, so there was no official PO. There was no official purchase order or request for service. They went to Best Buy and they bought it. And what did they buy? They, from the looks of things, bought the cheapest thing that was sold. I've mentioned before that HP is a fantastic company and a horrible company at the same time. When you buy this consumer level grade crap from the retailers, you're buying some of the worst, in my opinion, computers ever built. Some of them are unserviceable. Once they're out of warranty, if they break, they're disposable. These are just e-waste waiting to happen. The customers are tricked through clever marketing techniques into thinking they're getting a great deal. They're not. You're getting exactly what you're paying for. This is built to reach a certain price point, and they're going to take every cost-cutting measure they can take. Proprietary low-power power supplies that only power what's in here Any sort of upgrade would require a replacement power supply, and good luck replacing that power supply because you'll never find another one that'll fit in there. You're going to get single channel RAM, not dual channel. You're going to get a mechanical drive and not a solid state drive, especially in this era when they paired it with Intel Optane, a technology that has been given up on by Intel. So you've got a very small RAM. It's not storage. Optane is memory, but it looks like an NVMe drive. But what it is, it's like 16 gigs maybe of high-speed RAM that pairs to the mechanical drive as a cache. For that reason, it's often put into, if you look into the BIOS on these, a RAID configuration. And if you take either the drive or the Optane out, neither one's bootable. They're paired together. It's like a RAID. It's really hard for me to explain it, quite frankly, because I don't know it that well. When I see it, I pull it out. This makes working on this, any computer that has Intel Optane, is exceptionally difficult to work on. No differently than any computer that's booting to a RAID array. Booting to a RAID array is a nightmare to service. Now, some people will disagree with me because they've got their own RAID array and their own service. But when you're doing other people's RAID arrays and other people's equipment, it's a whole different ballgame than what you have at home. When you have at home is comfort. You have a couch at home. You likely do not have a couch at work. Home is for comfort, work is for work. And when you conflate your things you're doing at home with work, unless you have a boss you are answering to, unless there is accountability, liability, or you can be kicked out of your house, or you could lose your house, your work isn't really work. It's just being done to your own standard at your own convenience when you feel like it. That's not how jobs work. So that's why I say the hobbyist and professional are very, very different. A hobbyist does it when they feel like it. A professional has to do it whether or not you feel like it. It's like going to war. Well, I'm not in the mood to fight today. Well, good luck with that. You know, out to the battlefield you're going to go because your option is not good. So that being said, this computer right here is an Intel. It's a Core i5. I think this is an 8400. It had Windows 10 on it. And it's been working fine since they bought it. I've never serviced it. I've never even seen it before. This was in an office area that I never was invited into. So I've never maintained it. I didn't even know it existed. I mean, I knew that they had something in that room, but I didn't know what it was. My understanding at the time was it wasn't important because it was something that was used as a guest machine. Sometimes they'd hire somebody for additional help during the tax season, and they might set somebody there a few days a week or multiple days a week for a couple of months during tax season. And then for the rest of the year, it mostly sat around. Well, over the years that they've owned this, that's changed. And currently they have somebody that's using this about 4 days a week. They tell me they leave it on throughout the week. They shut it off on Friday, turn it back on Monday. They tell me everything's been working great. There's been no complaints. I've never serviced it. They've obviously had it some time if it's a 8th generation. But I got a call that the system says that Windows startup, there's a problem with Windows startup. Do you want to attempt a repair? And then you attempt the repair, it fails, and it just loops around, and it just can't get out of that. There are no system restore points that are noticeable. And it says there is no found Windows installation, even though you can do a directory view of the drive and see the Windows directory and user files. So the drive is working. The Optane, I guess, is working. Now we could do a complete Windows 10 reset. However, the customer will lose their email and printers. They'll lose all of their installed applications, and they'll lose all of, well, you can do it with or without the data, but they will lose the programs. In most corporate environments, you're just going to do a wipe and a reinstall for most employees. But if the employee that you're working on is a higher up, a manager, or an executive, that's probably not an acceptable solution, even though it's in the policies. The time rules, like, having to fix a computer within a certain number of hours, doing a wipe and a reinstall, since everything is supposed to be backed up on the server, we restore for managers, that likely doesn't apply to managers and executives in the same company. Sort of an unwritten rule in my experience that we send our best technician that's both skilled socially and technically to deal with those issues and resolve them without such a destructive solution. Get in there and try and actually fix the problem. But if you're a regular employee, no, we just wipe and reinstall. Get in and get out as quickly as possible. Gregory Howard just contributed $20 in Super Chat. He says, hello, Carey, and everyone in the chat. Spectrum is working on their system, so he may lose his connection now and then. Story, that's the same old story. So yeah, we're used to hearing that from folks, regardless of the ISP. That seems like they're always doing something somewhere. But I guess that's good. I'd rather have them working on it than ignoring it. Thank you for the contribution, Gregory. Welcome in, everybody. Elijah Dickens renews membership now for 17 months. They've been a member. Thank you, Elijah, for supporting the channel. Ben Laird contributes £2, joins us from Scotland. Thank you, Ben. Chris Johnson renews membership. Chris has been a member for 17 months now. Joins us from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Thank you, Chris. Planet Cryos contributes $2 and says, howdy, partner. Well, welcome in. Thank you, my friend. And of course, Paul O'Brien sent an Amazon gift card prior to the show. Thank you, Paul. Paul joins us from Ireland. Okay, so the first thing we do is we verify the problem. Before we do anything else, you don't take the customer's word for nothing. We look for anything simple, anything obvious. So we're going to plug this in and do just that right now. Keyboard and mouse, plug that in here. And I just want to emphasize, it's the Intel Optane configuration that made this computer so cheap. Is what's going to make this repair so challenging. If this had a regular hard drive with no Optane, or a regular SSD, or a regular SATA or NVMe M.2 in place of that Optane drive, this problem would be far easier to Google resolve. And in fact, a lot of the common solutions would likely work. The problem is, most common solutions don't apply to a RAID configuration or an Intel Optane paired with a mechanical hard drive type situation. Thankfully, they don't make them like this anymore. The Intel Optane technology was proven to be obsolete by the time it came out, so it never did well. Intel's marketing talked about amazing numbers that Intel Optane could achieve in performance. And when it didn't achieve anywhere near that, and journalists said, where is this amazing performance? The marketing company said, we said up to. We said the potential was there. As the technology evolves, it could one day, based on the math, we could reach a point of these kind of numbers using this Intel Optane technology. They were very careful in how they were, but they were clear to imply just how amazing and mind-blowing Intel Optane technology was, when in fact it wasn't. It was about what it could be. Well, I could be 10 feet tall. I could be the oldest person to ever live on the earth. That is yet to be determined. I think the height thing is likely never going to change, at least in the northerly direction, but you never know. You never know. Until it's over, we can call it. Intel Optane is over, and we can call it. It was too little, too late, and very, very difficult to maintain if things went wrong. Now, of course, if you made yourself an Acronis image, You could restore it no differently with Intel Optane than you would any other storage. And that's a testament to the Acronis software. However, you would still have to create a special rescue disk in order to even see your operating system because of the configuration where essentially it's this mechanical hard drive tied to this Optane. They work together. And without one or the other, yeah, so you have to have that driver. Once you built that custom rescue disk, or if you want to repair it, you need a custom boot disk that has that driver so you can see it. It is, for me, maddening. All right. If you want to know a little bit about the computer, I've got the mouse. I have the page up here from HP. The model number is very easily discernible by simply looking up the serial number or the tag on the back of the computer, and that will pull up all the details. So if you guys feel like you're going to find your answer in here, have fun. HP Pavilion 590-P0050 is the model we're working with today. And you've got generic troubleshooting. All of this is mostly boilerplate and not product specific. And if you want to waste your time going through it, don't let me get in your way. Remember, if you're being timed, all this time you're spending looking instead of working is still time spent. So you won't get that time back. It's still, the clock is still ticking down, right? If you're being evaluated. So let me go back to one here. Let's go ahead and turn this on. Let's just verify the customer's complaint. That's the first thing we absolutely have to do. We don't have to Google or use ChatGPT. It's very unprofessional. Let's at least don't do it in front of the customer. Let's go ahead and turn this on and see what it does. I'm going to go to window capture here. Oh, not window capture. HDMI input. And then I will put myself in a corner. Okay, system's on. And hopefully we'll see exactly what the customer described. There it is, preparing automatic repair. What a shock. Not exactly dealing with the speed demon with a Core i5-8400. So once again, if the computer takes a long time to boot, it still counts against your time if you're being tested, or if you're expected to work on a certain number of computers per week or per month or per quarter. You have one that's taking a long time. You better hope the next few go quickly so that your overall average will fall within reason. Or you're likely going to not have a very good performance review and maybe not get the raise you were hoping to get, or worse, be let go. Nothing you have to worry about as an enthusiast. This is lovely. Windows 10 and Windows 11 have the ability to reset themselves, but in doing so, you will lose all of the customer's installed applications. email configuration, their installed printers. And so if you give the customer essentially what is a brand new PC, in other words, if we take this computer out of the box, brand new, or we reset the computer, it's the same thing. So, oh, this could take over an hour to complete. That's great. In a situation like this, in a professional environment, you would not be doing this at the customer's location. At this point, you would take the customer's computer, you would bring it back to the lab, and you would put it on a bench where presumably you've got other computers in other states of repair that are taking longer, or you might hand it off to somebody in the lab whose job is to work on computers in the lab. I was for a while, a guy who worked in the lab, and people who went out to workstations, and in particular laptops that couldn't address them there in front of the customer, would bring them back to me, drop them off to me. And then I would fix them while they move on to the next support ticket. That support ticket was passed off to me, and it was my job to see that through. And sometimes it was my job to return it to the customer. My preference was usually to give it back to the same person who took it. That's not really my decision in most cases. That's decided by my bosses. In some cases, I returned it. In other cases, I gave it back to the tech who took it, or even a different tech. So I stayed in the lab. It was important from management's perspective to have the lab manned at all times. Don't leave the lab empty. This was not only a security concern, but what is also like, if nobody's in there, then no work is getting done. Even if all the benches are full and all the machines are running, it's just not how management thinks. So your job isn't to be a gopher necessarily and go drop a computer off to a client. And if the client was already familiar with a specific person who took it, giving that client the impression that that same person brought it back fixed, it's a better image. But, whether or not, and that's just a theory, I don't know for a fact that factored into it, but there is that. Now, in the times I have worked on this system, I picked it up late last night, and I put it up on the bench, and I ran some tests on it. And based on those tests, before I did anything else, I said, I want to try an experiment. And in trying that experiment, my hope was that I didn't accidentally fix it because I really wanted to challenge you guys and see if anybody knows the solution for this. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I did not get this at all. Repairing disk errors never came up, and it was something I was trying to get to come up. And I may have accidentally caused this, which was something I was hoping to try and do. I still suspect this isn't going to fix it, but it could. Presuming this doesn't fix it, I would like to hear your solutions. Now, if you're just going to go to Google and guess, you're wasting my time, and I find it discourteous and disrespectful. To me, this is not a game. This is not, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Because I could get a homeless person off the street with no education and not even very stable mentally who could accomplish that same task. That doesn't require any skill. So therefore, I don't respect it. What I'm interested in is human experience. I'm not interested in what books you've read. I'm interested in what books you've written. So a lot of people will base everything on what they've read. Well, it's this way because that's what I read. Well, who wrote the book that you read? Where did they get that information from? I have written a couple of computer books. I've written a number of articles for magazines like Smart Computing, magazines that aren't around. You can still find a couple of my articles at tomshardware.com. I'm very proud of them. But those articles I wrote were written from my experience. They weren't written from the books I read, and I just wasn't parroting back out, echoing what I read, putting it in my own words. That's laziness, and I find it irresponsible. I wanted to take my experience and put it into words on paper or online so others could benefit. I don't care about people that are book smart. I care about people that are more street smart. I value, I should say, I value people with experience over education. Now, ideally, you'll have a nice balance of both. However, the education academically is optional unless you're a doctor, an architect, a lawyer. These things, in fact, even a lawyer, the education may be optional. They're talking about removing the bar exam from some states and having you actually run some cases and establish a score. And once you reach a high enough score, then you can become an attorney versus taking a test in theory, on paper, which is how it's done now. You're a lawyer. And they're realizing that's not the best way. When you graduate from medical school, you don't immediately start seeing patients. You will be an intern for a couple of years. In fact, even if you want to be a lawyer, you won't enter law school till you're about 22, 23 years old at the earliest. So, these aren't things we rush into. These aren't things that I made up my mind today, I'm a lawyer. It doesn't work like that. It's not your decision to be made. And I argue it should not be your decision to be made if you're a tech. Unfortunately, there is no standard for establishing that. If you call yourself a tech, you're a tech. That's the reality of our society. There's been no established acceptable test to define or to assign the title of tech. There's no degree for it. There's no certification for it, and none, if such exists, is widely accepted. It is a self-proclaimed title. So the problem is we have a lot of self-proclaimed techs, and they could be automotive techs too. I'm sure you've been to mechanics that have no clue what they're doing. Just because somebody does something for a living, you should not assume that that makes them automatically good at it. Just because somebody has a degree doesn't mean they have a clue about actually working in the field. They might be great on paper, but in reality, and especially if it's your reality they're interfering with, you might want to see some proof. If somebody goes to get a tattoo, let's just say, you'd ask, pretty customary, to see pictures of the tattoo artist's past work. If somebody says, well, I'm a new tattoo artist and I don't have any portfolio, do you want that person to put permanent ink on your skin and just take their word for it? It's going to be okay. Most people won't. So it can make it very difficult to start. And you'll typically, even in that environment, sort of be an intern and be supervised so that mistakes can be corrected early on before they become messes, liabilities. And the same can be said for technical work when we're getting paid to do anything you're getting paid to do. If you're taking the job on, you're expected, it is implied, the reason you've accepted the work is that you know how to do the work. So unless you were hired under a different circumstance where they're going to train you, if you get OGT on the job training, that's great for you. That also means a lower salary for you. So it's great for them. In many cases, they can pay you half and get you to do twice as much work. And you're getting the education through the experience while you're getting paid. Once you've established yourself with a couple of years of experience, I'd say at least 2 years of experience, certainly a minimum of 1 year, then would be reasonable then to say, okay, I'm a technician. I have a recent job history, and now I demand a higher salary than what I was making a year ago because of everything I've learned and how much more efficient and proficient I am in my job through my experience. Unless, of course, you're going to a completely different area of IT that was unlike anything you learned at the previous job. Well, they taught me desktop support, but I really want to learn network administration. Well, all of that experience completely useless. You're right back at the bottom again. And if you're lucky, they'll hire you at a very low salary and teach you on the job, but not likely for IT administration, but possible. It's not likely. So where Google search helps a lot is if you can be very, very specific. And it doesn't matter what it is. You're looking up medical issues, how to fix a leaky faucet. What's the make and model of the faucet? Where is it leaking specifically? These kind of things can identify known issues that other people have suffered through and have already resolved and can share their experience with you online. But if you're generic, if you're like computer won't boot, says preparing automatic repair, and then restarts and says preparing automatic repair, and then restarts, and you're effectively in a boot loop, and you type in how to fix Windows 10 boot loop, you're going to get 20 different possible solutions, and likely not a single of those 20 are going to be specific to solving the problem you have. Now, if you say I have an HP model blah, blah, blah with Windows 10 that is stuck in a attempting to repair, won't boot. Like if you can get detailed, Windows Optane boot, unrepairable, fails repair, boot loops, you've got to get creative with how you describe in detail and very specifically the details of the problem. And if you did it right, in my experience, Google will come back with nothing because you're so specific. Unless that problem is a known issue that has occurred to others, it likely will have zero responses. So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to a technology that's been around since the dawn of man, and it's called the human mind, the brain. The brain is far more powerful than Google. It's far more powerful than ChatGPT. In between your ears is gray matter that has the capability of solving any problem of any nature that is presented to you, should you choose to pursue its solution. If you become quite proficient at solving certain kinds of problems, you can become quite valuable to others who need that skill, whatever that is. And that is the thing we want to spend time honing and improving. Well, the people at Google want to hone and improve Google. And the people at ChatGPT or other AI want to hone and improve AI. Talk to me about it in 40 years. We have a long way of evolution. We are in the very early stages. And so it's not very good. You might be impressed by it, but since there's really nothing to compare it to, you're easily impressed. In 10 years' time, if you look back at search results now, you're going to say, wow, I can't believe we were impressed by that terrible search results. The terrible AI. AI is awful right now. People are like, isn't it incredible? No. I mean, in a way that it's presenting AI shows a lot of promise, and that promise is incredible. Its current state is practically useless, in my opinion. If you take somebody who is a specialist in their field and compare them with any Google search or AI, they can give you the answer more accurately the first time, and they'll do it faster every time. They're not going to give you a choice and you have to pick the best one. Here's your top 10. They're going to tell you, and they're going to tell you very confidently. And if the results of their answers cause you harm, you can hold them accountable, which you cannot do with Google and YouTube and Reddit, ChatGPT, or any other enthusiast solutions. They come as a no guarantee, no promises, and it's all implied. And if you make the choice to believe what you are reading, which may be true, may not be true, and that causes you harm, financial or physical, any type of harm, there is no recourse for you. But if you hire somebody, and as a result of their work, it causes you harm, physical or financial, you can hold them accountable in a court of law. Think about that. So let me look through the chat. I've been remiss in not looking through the chat because I've had a lot to talk about on this topic. And so talk is talk. I'm not so much interested in talk as I am in show me. A lot of people on the internet claim to have skills. They claim to diminish my abilities as a tech. And it's insulting and disrespectful and completely without any evidence or proof. So I will often just remove those comments as noise. They're just staticky noise. It's like a sheep braying, whatever they call it, bleating. It's an interesting human psychosis where somebody just has a competitive nature and they want to somehow not only compare themselves to you, but claim you're nothing compared to them, and yet you have no idea who they are, and they have not proven or provided any evidence to back up anything they've said. It's all just noise. So when I had this machine here, my thought was, now that I have a machine like this may be the best way to demonstrate my words, and for the chat room and the people who leave comments to demonstrate their words. And any lack of being able to demonstrate your words is just noise. And I want you to be aware of that when you're evaluating information you're reading online as to whether or not that information is coming from a reputable source that's trustworthy, and or whether or not that source is in a position where they're regularly held accountable for their information they provide, or if they're just some rando online that's just copied and pasted something on Google, which is what the majority of noise is online. Somebody's just copying and pasting the same information you could have went and got yourself. And then, there you go. There's your help. Or isn't that nice of me to help you? No, it's not. That's just adding noise. It's better to teach a man to fish than feed a man a fish. If they guided you to Google to look for your answer, that would be helpful. If they've copied and pasted, they've left you with the impression that they wrote all that themselves. Jim KJ3N says, having never dealt with a system with Optane, I'm not going to guess this one. I think Pablo Picasso once said, the problem with computers is they only know what we tell them. Peter VZ contributes €1. Thank you, Peter. Aaron says, I would boot to a rescue USB disk. Okay, but a rescue USB disk isn't going to work because you will need a specific driver to see the hard drive. If we boot to a rescue USB disk, it will not see any storage. Now, what will you do? Are you going to take the time to go to HP's website and download the necessary driver, then custom make a USB disk specifically for this one computer, wait for that to be created, and then boot to that, and then run this tool? And then if it doesn't work, you've wasted all that time. Is that what you're going to do? Remember, if you're given 2 hours, is that how you want to spend what could be 20 or 30 minutes of your time building that USB rescue with no guarantee of result? I'm just curious. It's your choice. It's your time. Nick Poverman says, lots of guessing in the chat. Yeah, and that's what the problem is. This is an example of what happens online. And I wanted to prove it so you can witness it firsthand, that people who don't know what they're talking about are happy to provide you their guess without any disclaimer that they don't know what they're talking about. Try this, try that. Well, who's telling you to try this? Is this coming from somebody using Google and copying and pasting? Probably. Is it coming from somebody in the industry as a professional who's well known and respected? Probably not. But that information is not equal. And adjust your expectations, because while it's possible somebody who actually does know what they're talking about provides the right answer, it's buried in all the trash. So you got to dig through all the bad guessing and nonsense for people who are just trying to help. I thought I'd try and help by adding more confusion and making you more uncertain. You're welcome. Rather than just keeping my mouth shut. And if I'm interested, watching the thread on Reddit or watching what's happening and waiting, hopefully, for the person who opens the thread to say, thank you, that fixed my problem. And then what I would do, and I've done this, I did this back in the 90s. What I would do is create a document of known problems and solutions. And I would write down what the original thread was about. This is how the customer described it. Their words, not mine. And then ultimately what solution fixed it. And it would be maybe 3 sentences. And as I monitored the repair forums in Reddit, and I started to document this, what I was able to do then is when somebody posted the same question, I would highlight, I would copy and paste my little notes, which were sometimes direct copies of what the customer said or the Redditor said, and then ultimately what the response that worked said. And the people would say, boom, there's your answer. I was able to fire it off quickly. And people would say, you didn't write that, Carey. You just copied and pasted other people's work. It's called common knowledge. If I copied and pasted when Abraham Lincoln was born, or I wrote it myself, that's not plagiarism. That's common knowledge. And when we've established a known problem and a known fix, and I'm copying and pasting the solution, it's to help that person. It's not to boost my own credit. I'm not getting paid. My ego isn't so fragile that I need somebody to give me some approval for providing the right answer. My goal is to simply avoid all that unnecessary confusion in a lengthy thread. We've already seen this problem here. Here's the answer. You're welcome. That's it. And you have to know that pissed off the people who were providing the answers, not necessarily the people who were providing those answers, just people providing answers, because I took the fun out of it for them. They wanted the fun of guessing. They enjoyed it. But the person asking the question doesn't enjoy it. It's very selfish. It's like, I only care about myself and my own entertainment. And you have that right. There's no rules on Reddit that say you can't do it. It's common courtesy and common respect for other people's time. It is absolutely insanity that people would be so narcissistic and so selfish in their thinking as to consider this a playpen. When the forum, and some Reddit forums are playpens, but the repair forums are there for people seeking help, not looking for entertainment. And those offering the solutions should be offering solutions to help other human beings, not as a form of selfish entertainment to just throw things at the wall and have people run around in circles because they get some sort of weird amusement from that. Well, the innocent victims are worn out from running in circles and give up and go somewhere else to get their problem fixed. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So at the end of the day, if you're not getting paid, it's probably not worth it getting yourself involved in. So I'm not surprised that despite my encouragement not to guess, people in the chat room are still guessing. Welcome to the internet, and be prepared for that. Just because someone talks confidently doesn't mean they have any clue what they're talking about. Consider the source of where the information is coming from. And yes, there is a chance the right information does come from an unknown source, but good luck figuring that away from all the noise. It's very difficult to solve problems this way. at least in a timely manner in most cases. Take out the slow drive and use RStudio to scan the file system and copy over as many files as possible. I don't know if you're going to be able to rebuild this, copy over the files, and then reinstall all the customers' applications, reconfigure their email, and get the printers back up online in the time limit that is required in the service level agreement. So there's a lot of different ways that we can fix computer problems. There's easy ways and there's hard ways. There's efficient ways and non-efficient ways. And it really doesn't matter, as long as your employer and your customer are happy, how you get there. And I'm not suggesting there's only one way to fix this problem. And most computer problems can be fixed a minimum of a half dozen different approaches that will be successful. Some will be easier and some will be harder. And we learn, okay? So when it is harder, hopefully you learned from it and you'll know how to do it more efficiently next time. That's okay. We just won't want to keep repeating those same bad decisions that's resulting in too much of an investment. It's costing the company too much money in downtime, and likely may result in you not getting a raise, not getting a promotion, or no longer having a job. So a solution like that could work, but it's very, very time consuming. There's a lot of manual process in that. I'd rather fix what's broken than do a wipe and a reinstall. That's my goal. It doesn't mean I'm going to achieve that goal, but that's what my goal is until a certain amount of time has passed. And I'll say, okay, I can't spend any more time trying to achieve that goal. Then I need to talk to the customer again, and I need to tell the customer what my new plan is. So if it's like, okay, I've already spent so much time on this and I can't seem to repair it, and I don't have anybody to escalate it to. So my next step is to reset it. And that means I need to talk to the customer and say, I'd like to reset it. And that's going to effectively make this computer like it was the day you took it out of the box. We'll need to put all the Windows updates back on it. We'll need to reinstall all the software, reactivate some of that software, reset up email, reset up any printers, user accounts. Are you okay with that? Because if I do that, I can get you the computer back by Tuesday, let's say. But if we don't do that, if you want me to continue spending more time on it, trying to repair it, and at the end of the day, that's your choice as a tech if you want to continue to invest that time, because you're not going to get paid very well hourly at that point. So if the client says, look, I really don't want to go through all that. I really just want this fixed. Your choice is, I can't fix it. Let me give it back to you and you can find somebody else to fix it. Or your choice is, I will spend hours and hours and hours until I figure this out, but you'll still only be able to charge the customer the standard repair rate. Customer's not going to pay you $12,000 for your time to fix their $500 computer. It's never going to happen. And that's another solution you can offer. You'd say, look, the amount of time and labor it's going to have to go into this to reset it, we might as well just buy a new one. This one's already 5 years old. We could get a brand new one for $500 and we'd have to set it up exactly the same way. So if we have to set this one up as though it were new, it's only got a couple of years life left in it. It's already 8th gen. So you might get 3 or 4 years more, maybe at the most. And in a business, it's at an age where it already should be retired. So why don't we use this as our excuse to go ahead and replace this computer? And this time, let me advise you what to buy so you're never put in this situation again. And then I'll help you get your applications reinstalled and get the email and the printers and yada, 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 yada. If there's any data on here, let me know. I'll try to get it off. All data needs to be stored on the NAS so that we're not in the situation that not all customers listen. So they have data on the NAS, but do they have all the data on the NAS? If not, despite that's not what I want to hear, I will make an attempt to pull the data off. As I explained to the customer, think of it this way. I can save your photographs, but I can't save your camera. Which one's easier to replace? I know you don't want to replace the camera and you don't want to have to reconfigure the camera. I get it. But if you have to lose one or the other, would you rather lose the photos or would you rather lose the camera? Most people would rather lose the camera. And a lot of people don't want to lose either. Sometimes you got to make a choice. So we can oftentimes in a situation like this, no problem saving the data, even though there should be no data on it, it should be on the NAS. Old Man 55 said, I've never heard the downside of Optane in 40 years from any source. I don't think you've looked very hard. It's had nothing but downside written about it since the day it was announced. I don't know what forums you're reading, PC World Magazine, PC Magazine, Tom's Hardware, and Non-Tech, Ars Technica. You don't have to look far to hear about all of the downside of Optane. Did you understand and read that Optane was discontinued and considered obsolete and completely abandoned by Intel? I mean, that's kind of a downside. Did you not read any of those articles on why that technology has failed? Because the reason the technology failed is nothing but a story of the downside. So that's weird to me. But certainly not everybody can stay on top of all things. The technology is constantly evolving in so many different arenas of Wi-Fi and chipsets, CPUs and GPUs, the change in the power supply spec. It can be hard to stay on top of all of it. And whole technologies can go by and you're like, when did that ever happen? Well, don't worry about it. It's already obsolete. It's a little late to learn about it now. It's like somebody getting hit by a car. I didn't see any car. Well, it's a little late to be looking for it now. It's sort of already hit you. That ship has sailed. Andy Kane said, I'm here to learn how you fix this problem. See, but here's the thing. I'm here to learn how you would fix this problem. I have shown how many times on this channel how to fix a variety of problems since I started this channel in 2008. And I would say, with no exception, I have been challenged on my repairs in that people claim they knew what the answer was long before I did, long after the video posted. And I suspect they're full of it. I suspect they're lying. They didn't know the answer. And for some reason, and I have to ask myself, if it was me and I was watching a video where I knew the answer and the person in the video was taking longer to get to the answer but eventually got there, why? What sort of mental state would I have to be in to feel compelled to write a comment boasting how I knew it before the content creator knew it? Like, what's going on in that person's head? Because there's no way for you to prove that. And if you know so much, why am I making the video? Why aren't you making it? Like, you're doing the world a disservice if all you're doing is telling people how capable you are in comments, but you can't be bothered to share what you know. It's like, look what I have. Okay, good for you, I guess. I mean, how does that benefit anybody? We're not talking about you. We don't know who you are. Why don't you share what you have rather than boasting about it? Or shut up, if I can be blunt. So those comments, I will typically just erase them because I think they're liars. But what if I'm wrong? What if they actually did know the answer? It's possible. What a shame that they're not making content and sharing their information except to boast. And furthermore, how can I know? So my intention today is to not show you the fix. My intention is for those of you that claim to know the fix, tell me the fix. And if it seems reasonable and it's not going to damage my customer's machine or their data, I'm happy. Excuse me. I'm happy to try it, and we can look at the action and reaction together. And if any of you provide the solution that fixes this, I'm going to be very impressed. That's all you're going to get. You're going to work for free, potentially embarrass yourself. But if you're right, this little community that watches this video can say, hey, that person got it right. And I'll tell you what that does for me. It tells me, watch for comments in the future from that person, because they've proven themselves to me in the past. So I'm no longer going to dismiss their comments as noise, potentially, if what it appears to be is noise. I'll say, well, that person has proven to be knowledgeable in the past. So I'll be more likely to take your comment very seriously when it comes to any sort of diagnostic advice or just technical advice in general. And that's how I originally learned this, because initially there were no books to learn from, or the books were outdated by the technology was happening so fast. By the time the books were published, we were already past that. So you had to learn in the field. And as a result, that's why I ended up writing a couple of books, because I was in the field and I could write. Even though I was never a writer and English was never my skill, there's copy editors that fix all that, so you'd never know it was me that wrote it. It's very well done. And an educational publisher, McGraw-Hill, published 2 of the books, and I'm very proud of them. I'm happy to boast about them, because no one would ever take me for a writer. And that was all done by sharing my experience and being able to put it in English language, not in engineering language. And that's where I wanted to share, right? I wanted to be able to share what I knew in a way that I could explain it that isn't commonly explained in such terms, so that most people intimidated by it who were interested, because I can't make you interested. I can't make you motivated. But if you're motivated and you're interested, then let me present the information to you in a different way. And a publisher agreed with me and said, yeah, that's a great idea. And I was flattered and blown away that I got to publish. Like, who am I? I am not a writer. That is my least favorite thing to do in the world. It's very time consuming, and I'm a perfectionist. And every time I write something, I think of ways I could say it differently, more succinctly, or take this paragraph and maybe move it over here. Because in Word, you can just endlessly edit until cows come home, and just never happy with anything. It was a very painful process, and I'm glad to have done it, and I'm very proud of what I've done, and I never want to do it again. I would rather make videos or podcasts where I can present the information much faster, not wait for publication, distribution, and marketing in the hopes that people will eventually find it, or that in that process, the information became obsolete. I can present information of the moment right now worldwide to anybody that seeks it out. The one thing I still can't do is cause somebody to want to seek it out. So that I don't anticipate I'll ever be able. Nick Poverman says, are you able to get to the command prompt outside of Windows? Outside of Windows, you would have to boot. When this has the boot error, you could go to advanced troubleshooting and advanced options and choose a command prompt that way. Or, as I mentioned, you'd have to make a proprietary USB rescue disk that had the necessary driver to see the storage. And Peter VZ contributes €1.50. Thank you, Peter. Thank you again. Our Vale says there should be a special HP supplied Windows installation USB thumb drive which can be downloaded from HP. While we're waiting for this to process, I can once again show you the HP support page if you want to look that up. I got to find got to use the right mouse. Let's turn off. Oh, I guess I don't have to. I can just turn on a Windows capture should bring it up. Yeah. So there's your HP model number, and you're free to Google that, go to that site, and look for said USB boot device. Let me know if you find it. I'll leave that page up for a little while so people have time to write that down if need be. Evan says, thank you for the good info. I'm waiting patiently for your solution. I don't expect providing a solution during today's video, because the minute I provide the solution, somebody's going to say, I already knew that. I knew that when you first started. They wouldn't have said it when they first started. They'll say, well, I wasn't here until now, or I just saw the video. So I'm going to allow this video to exist for a few days because this customer doesn't need this machine back until next week. I'm going to take full advantage of that. And I am hopeful that one of you will provide the right answer. And then it won't matter. If anybody bothers to say, I already knew that, I'm just going to delete their comment. I can tell you right now, you'll never see it. All comments will be held for review. And if somebody does that because they think it's funny, you might get banned from the channel because I don't find it funny. I find it disrespectful, and I find it to be immature behavior. It's one thing if you honestly did know. It's another thing to just say it because I told you how much it annoys me. So you think it's funny to annoy me? That's called being a bully. So I'm not going to tolerate bullying here. If we're both in on the joke and we're both laughing, it's a joke. If you're the only one laughing and the other person's upset, you are a bully. Just in case it wasn't clear to you, what makes a bully a bully? Some bullies don't know they're bullies. They say, it's just for fun. Well, if you're the only one having fun, and the fun is at somebody else's expense, think about it. Ada Rivera wants to know, will replacing the disk solve this? Maybe. Which disk, the Optane or the hard drive? And how do we get the data off of it so that we don't lose anything? How do we recover the applications that are installed? The Greek says they are just looking for approval from you. Well, if you want to get approval from me, you're going to need to earn that approval. You don't just get to decide when I'm going to give you approval or what the terms and conditions are of my approval. That is a quick way to get my disapproval. So if getting approval for me is important, then you should listen to what I'm saying. If you want my respect, then you need to show me. You're going to get what you give. So if you're not listening and you're being discourteous, then I'm not going to listen to you and I'm going to be discourteous to you. That's just the way I am. I'm just a mirror. I treat people the way that I'm treated. And people who don't listen, I'm not going to listen to. There is a natural way that you seek approval that does not involve annoying somebody. That's I don't know how annoying somebody is to get their approval. I can tell you a lot of people have gotten my approval. I'm not stingy with it. But they don't get to determine and decide what the terms are and the conditions for which I'm going to give them my approval. It's my terms and my conditions if you want my approval. And if you can't be bothered with those, then don't bother looking for my approval, or you're only going to end up disappointed. I can tell you that right now. What RAID level is configured? There is no RAID level that's configured. It's simply in a RAID mode. It's not a RAID 0 or RAID 1 or RAID 5. It's just RAID without any. A lot of computers from Dell and HP ship in RAID mode, even when they only have one drive. And you'll learn that quickly when you try to boot from a rescue disk and you cannot see your storage drive because you need the RAID controller. Because the BIOS is in, I can show you later, we can go in the BIOS. Mats Olof joins us, he contributes 100 Swedish kroner. He says, hello, I'm just listening today, working with a dual boot in a laptop. Right on, well thanks Mats Olof, thank you for your contribution and for stopping into the chat saying hello. Garfield Rupe said, does the truth count? I spoke truth when I said I don't know. Nothing wrong with saying I don't know. I'd much rather see that than to see somebody guess without first saying they're guessing. In other words, if you want to guess, you can say, here's my guess. If you know the answer, you can say, here's what I believe to be the answer. But if you come across as both confident and wrong, it's really offensive. But if you're honest, if you're like, I don't know, well, good. That's an acceptable answer. No problems. In fact, if I was evaluating you to work for me and I presented you with a test like this, and you said, I don't know the answer, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. I'm going to evaluate how quickly you came to that conclusion, how quickly you gave up without trying, and whether or not you'd be a right fit. That may be a very good trait that I'm looking for, or it may be a very bad trait that I'm looking for, depending on how much effort you made before you said you don't know. Like if you immediately just, I don't know, that's not going to play out well. I'd like to see you try. I don't want to see you spend too much time. But as soon as you realize you're outside of your wheelhouse with a good, honest effort, and you say, look, in the field, I would escalate this. I wouldn't take it on anymore. I respect that. That would be considered a right answer for sure. All right, now let's bring it back off of the window capture. I think that's been on the screen long enough. We may not get through this today. Again, I wasn't expecting this to happen. And again, in the field, this would go back to the lab. We wouldn't do this at the customer's desk. I can tell you preliminary testing suggests nothing is wrong with the Optane or hard drive. Nothing appears to be wrong with either the Toshiba 1 terabyte, 3.5-inch mechanical drive or the 16 gig, 16 meg, some little tiny Intel Optane drive. Both appear to be fully functional. Appear to be. I've not done thorough testing, but preliminary testing suggests there's nothing wrong. USMC for Life said this is a sign that your Windows file system has become corrupted. Well, that's clear. And continues to say, which is nearly always caused by a failing hard drive. I'm going to disagree with you. There's a lot of reasons Windows corruptions occur. But it's possible. It's certainly a possibility. I wouldn't say usually, but I wouldn't say it's uncommon when a hard drive fails that it corrupts the files. However, just because you have corrupted files doesn't necessarily mean there's anything physically wrong with the drive. There's a lot of reasons files get corrupted long beyond just mechanical issues. Gary wants to know if the settings in the BIOS are okay. Yes. The battery being so old, the battery may have died. No. If the battery will have died, we would likely see an error when we start the computer that BIOS settings have changed, memory has changed. Somehow the settings will have been lost. The date and time can be lost. Sometimes. These batteries on the boards, sometimes you won't even find a battery on the board. The batteries on the boards can be a lifespan of 8 to 10 years in most cases. This battery should still be at a 100% charge at just being 5 years old. They don't draw much. Now, if I take the cover off and show you the insides while this is running, we can look and see if there's a battery on the board. Let's go ahead and pull this panel. You can take a look in here. There's not a lot to see. This piece right here, this black section comes out, and attached to it are the CD drive in front, and the hard drive is vertically up. The screws here are holding the mechanical drive in. Now, if I turn this around so I can see it, there is a battery, plainly, very, very visible right down there. There's the CR2032. And that's an easy thing to check, by the way. There's no harm. Like, I wouldn't be so arrogant as to say, no, that's definitely not it. But it's highly unlikely. But it's a very easy thing to check. We pop the battery out, we put it on a battery tester, reads good, we're good. Or if you want to be extra thorough, batteries are cheap, pop it out, replace it with a new one, just because you're going to have to do it later, right? So just take care of it now. And if the customer ends up trashing a machine, it's a $2 battery. You pick them up, you get a package of 2032 Duracells at Costco, and they're like, I don't know, they're under $2 a piece in a bulk package. Stick them in the refrigerator. They're good for 10 years. Brand new. They've got an expiration date, 10 years. They should be good for a while. Very cheap way to just swap it out. Sometimes battery testers aren't accurate. The key fob to my car gave me a message that my battery was low. And the key fob battery was low. It was popping up on the dashboard. So I took the key fob out. I took the battery out of the key fob, CR2032. And I tested it, and it said it was at 100%. Well, that's weird. So I popped it back in the key fob, make sure the connections are good. Went back to the car, thinking the message might clear. No. Still insists the key fob battery is low. Weird. Took the key fob apart, took the battery out, took a battery I had removed from a motherboard that said it was at 100%. It was an old battery, but just at 100%. I popped that battery into the key fob, closed it back up, went back out to the car. Key fob battery is low. What? Says, okay. So I got a brand new Duracell 2032 battery out of the, I don't know why they're in the refrigerator. We'll talk about that another day. Cut it out of the package with a pair of scissors. The way Duracell packages these, don't get me started. 20 minutes later, got the battery out of the package, put it into the key fob, closed the key fob back up, went out to the car, totally happy. No more key fob battery low. So it's reading something on that battery that my battery tester ain't seeing. So even though the battery tester shoots all the way to 100% when I test it, the car key fob apparently disagrees. Now, if I could see what the car key fob is seeing and how what's causing that message to appear, I sure would appreciate it so I could test more batteries that way, because that seems much more thorough than just trusting a battery tester. In short, what I'm telling you is, even if a battery tester says your battery is good, it may not be good. If a power supply tester says your power supply is good, it still may not be good. Sometimes the best way you can test quickly and cheaply and effectively is to replace the item with a brand new one. You can buy a brand new power supply for $40, and you can know if you have a bad power supply simply by removing the power supply connectors. You don't even have to install the new power supply. Just plug the connectors on and test it. Is the problem solved? Good. Now you know the solution. Use that power supply as the replacement. Get it installed. Get your customer back up and running. Chalk it up as a closed help ticket. Move on to the next one. Or you could spend 20 minutes fidgeting with a tester and then trusting what it's telling you is true. Your choice. And end up taking the long way around, come back around to your power supply and realize, oh, it was the power supply the whole time. And then you will feel about testers the way I do. They're a complete waste of money. Red Dragon contributes $5. After Windows 10 update, my PC restarted and my Samsung 500 gig solid state drive was wiped clean, just like brand new. First of all, there's got to be more to that story than what you just described, because that's not possible. Something else happened that you're not explaining, and you can't explain it because you don't know. Second of all, if you were my customer, I would tell you to simply restore your backup and we'd have you back up and running in 10 minutes. Minor inconvenience. Do you have a backup? A Windows update will not cause the erasure of a Windows of your operating system. It absolutely will not. Something else caused that. And you're just unaware of it. It's like the mechanic changed your tire and now your engine's making a weird noise. And since the mechanic was the last one who touched your car, something about changing that tire has somehow caused this problem in the engine, which is an entirely different, separate part of the car, and the two are not related. But if you're not technically knowledgeable and you're just piecing together what you're aware of and you're pushing things together that don't go together, that can be very, very frustrating to explain to that customer, where they're going to believe what you're saying because they think, well, of course you're going to lie and tell me you didn't do it. It is a maddening place to be as a repair person. So I'm only telling you this to let you know there's a piece there that you're missing. And I hope that you have a backup you can restore to. And this is a minor inconvenience at best. But thank you for the contribution and for sharing your perspective. Google to your heart's content. There's no Windows update that erases a drive. Planet Cryos contributes $10. Never worked with Optane, he says. You said both the hard drive and SSD appear okay. Could it be the Optane is disabled in the BIOS? No, it is not. Ron Hillier says you need a tester that puts a load on the battery while testing. And can you tell me approximately how much a tester like that would cost? Probably a lot more than the battery. Probably a lot more than a replacement power supply. I've seen power supply testers that place a load on a battery require a college education to understand how to use them and how to apply the assigned load. And they cost upwards of anywhere on the cheap end of $250 to upwards of $1,200 for a $40 or $50 or $60 power supply. Really? Really? You're going to buy a $200 battery tester to replace a $2 battery? Hey, man, you go for it. I got work to do. And messing around with testers ain't getting anything done. And spending my money on testers is not helping my customers. So that's the way I see it. The best tester is a working part. Have a spare power supply with you at all times. Have a spare battery, brand new, with you at all times. And you can solve these problems far cheaper and far faster and with far more certainty of the result. Too much trust in technology, in my opinion. Just generally, people trust technology way more than they should. Technology is not as good yet. It'll get there. But as far as you go all the way back to the 1980s when I was messing with computers, they were experimental and they're still experimental. They do a pretty good job, but they are not to be left to perform a task without constant auditing. Or you'll learn the hard way, you should have been watching it. They need babysitting. They need to be supervised. They need to be audited. at least on somewhat of a regular basis to ensure they're operating correctly. We're just not at that point yet, folks. It's going to take a few years, maybe a couple decades. It'll get there. Not there yet. Andy says reset boot order to default in BIOS. Already did that. Bull142 says, hey, Carey, I'm a little late. I'm upgrading a video card. Right on. Nick Poverman said, have you tried BCD edit / export? Yes, BCD backup. It says no file exists. If you tried to remove the file attributes in the C:\boot, that says C:\boot BCD does not exist. It says there is no such folder. Are the drives hot? No. Luke Greenia says, I don't know the answer for this, but I did send a PayPal. Thank you, Luke. As always, thank you for your continued support. ESC Computer said Windows updates or upgrades can cause a profile issue on occasion. So see if a temp profile was created, as it would not contain your files and therefore make you think the computer was wiped clean. That's an excellent point, and that is very true. PSC Computers Missouri says, like Carey said, there is more to this than what you are stating. Well stated. I agree with that statement 100%. Aaron A. or is it Aaron A? Contributes $10 in Super Chat. Hello, Carey. I was wondering if you had any experience with Ventoy. Yes, I've experienced it enough to know it's a complete waste of my time. I think amateurs and hobbyists are Ventoy users. I don't know of any professionals that use that tool. Now, that might come off a bit elitist and snobbish, but you know, somehow throughout my career, I have been able to establish myself as a working technician nonstop since 1991. I've had a job the entire time, and I never required any such tool as Ventoy, or prior to Ventoy, there were a couple other tools that were very similar in loading images. It's a complete and utter waste of time because you have to constantly keep updating things. The more tools you have, the more software tools you rely on, the more you have to, the more work and the more stress it is to make sure you're keeping all of those tools updated. And if you're relying too much on the tools, I think it makes you a lazy tech. So if you have a particular tool or a set of tools that you count on, I respect that. If you've got A, B, or C, let's just say, you've got a couple boot disks, maybe you're using, I don't know, back in the day we used Knoppix. Are people still using that? If you have some boot disk that has tools on it that you like, I get that. But if you're loading every boot tool possible and you put it on some kind of flash drive where at a moment you can load any image, I don't think you know what you're doing. Honestly, I would say you're just guessing. You're just grabbing everything out there and you're throwing everything out. You throw what we would call the parts cannon until you figure it out. But if there's a particular tool that you find useful, and that's something you keep updated and on a flash drive with you, I think everybody does that. But I don't think any real technician should have any use for every bootable image. It just seems ridiculous to me. And it seems like a nightmare to keep them updated. And if you're not going to keep them updated, why even have them? But that's my opinion. Richard Palmentier said my new build was having issues with the GPU, so I purchased another one and it'll be here tomorrow. Now, as I recall, Richard, you purchased the GPU from eBay to save money. And you knew when you did that, you might be spending more money in the long run having to replace it, having no guarantee, and buying somebody else's nightmare. And correct me if I'm wrong, You agreed to take that gamble. So I think so as a business person, if you sold me a used GPU to save me money and now it's not working and you have to come back out under warranty and replace the GPU and then tell me I have to give you more money because the used one's not working. But then don't tell me I have to pay you more labor. My computer doesn't work and I'm ticked off at you. You understand what I'm saying? Like I strongly encourage people, unless you're a technician, do not buy used parts from anywhere unless you're willing to risk losing that money. eBay in particular, there's just a lot of shady sellers. There's a lot of damage that can occur in shipping where you end up spending money that you could have used to buy a product in warranty that was returnable if there was a problem with it from a reputable retailer. And it would have saved you all this time and all this troubleshooting and all this waiting for another card to arrive and then all the money you lost. Now, hopefully worth it for the education, right? But the people who generally make these decisions are the people who can least afford it. That's been my experience. And because they're making these decisions, in my opinion, this is what keeps them in that financial situation. And it's just a vicious cycle that goes around and around. I strongly encourage people, regardless of your justification, to buy new from a reputable retailer. Even if it's a few dollars more, it's peace of mind. And that will save you all the trouble. And it'll save you, statistically speaking, having to replace it at cost. If there is a problem, it'll have a warranty. So if there's damage in shipping, you can return it. Should be free of cost from a reputable retailer so that your expense, well, a little bit more, is fixed. And now you have a peace of mind with security, knowing this is going to be okay no matter what, and there won't be any surprise expenses down the road. If you're a technician who's capable of diagnosing, repairing broken things, and so you like to go out online and buy used product that may potentially be broken because you enjoy fixing it, have at it. But if all you're trying to do is save money, it'll likely cost you more in time and money and frustration going down that path. That's been my experience. I've lived that life. I don't live that life anymore. And I strongly encourage others to adapt their thinking, find the extra few dollars, because you're likely going to have to do that anyway. So in the long run, it will save you money and you'll save this frustration. Richard said, well, like you said, I took a gamble. And that's fine. I mean, it's your choice. He says, I was trying to save some money. Well, this is the same story. This is the same story. But did you save money or did you do the opposite? Did you spend more when you were? So it's so frustrating for me because I used to do the same thing. I thought I was saving money. And it turns out I was spending twice as much. So if people with money don't do this, generally speaking, and how can somebody who claims to not have money afford to do what people with money wouldn't do, like pay interest on a credit card? You think anybody with money pays interest on a credit card? Who pays interest on a credit card? The people who can least afford it. The people that could comfortably pay the interest on a credit card don't pay interest on a credit card. It took me a while to figure all this out, but it's been a lifestyle change for me. And I'm just trying to share it with you. I'm hoping that you'll maybe dip your toe in the water and try it out sometime. And maybe you'll come to the same conclusion I did, that moving forward, that might be a better approach financially, especially where you can't afford the loss. You know what I mean? And ultimately, that has put me in a better financial position. I credit that change of attitude for getting me out of that bad cycle. So now I can actually have some money in the bank, which I never did before. I spent every penny I made. I'd have $4 in my checking account. I did that till I was in my 30s before I got that figured out. Sean says eBay will refund them if it's a dud. They will back the buyer, not the seller. Yeah, good luck with that, Sean. That's not been my experience. Now, yeah, you can absolutely try and get a refund from eBay. And if you do, let me know what eBay says. I'll be shocked. eBay makes a lot of claims, but when you actually file a claim, they have a lot of reasons for denying it. I don't know anybody who's ever been able to succeed. Well, I won't say that. I will say the vast majority of people that I know of that have tried to make claims on eBay have all been denied. Very unlikely eBay will back the buyer. It's very unlikely. I'd love to be proved wrong on that. Please prove me wrong. Matt Zoloff says, my dual boot works okay, but somehow I missed naming partitions, so both are named Windows 10. How do I rename them so I see which version I start? I don't dual boot. I don't recommend it. It's a huge pain in the ass. Welcome to dual booting. I don't have an answer for you. If anybody knows the answer for Matt Zoloff, we sure appreciate anybody that can provide him the answer to that question. Jim KJ3N says, work of the devil. USMC for Life said this is taking too long to be a solid state drive. I never said it was a solid state drive. I don't know where you got that from. That's weird. I said it was a 1 terabyte mechanical 3.5-inch hard drive made by Toshiba that's paired in a RAID configuration with a 16 gig Intel Optane SSD, which isn't really an SSD. Intel doesn't refer to an Optane drive as storage. They refer to Optane as memory. It's just a cache. So this repairing disk, this is all the 1 terabyte mechanical, and it's par for the course. So again, I don't know where you got the idea it was an SSD. I never said that. Nobody said that. Patrick Grizza said he had to file a few claims on eBay and he's been successful so far. Well, that's hopeful. I like to hear that. 5 Chizo says, I bought an Armani wristwatch on eBay from a seller in China. Long story short, I had to file a claim to get my order shipped, and eBay did their job. Okay, well, good. I'm like hearing good stories from eBay. I very rarely hear them. Nick Poverman mentions a few boot rec commands, done all of that. Did all that already. That was all done last night. I wanted to make sure if I was going to present this, that I get all the basic stuff out of the way. So if you're going to mention anything basic, all that simple stuff has already been done. No, there's no harm in asking, but yeah, I already did all that. No success, no difference, no change. This whole repairing disk for errors, that never came up before. If it did, I would have let it run all night last night when I went to bed, just to see if it would be done by the morning. It may not be done in time for us to be able to see the finish line here in this video. We're already about an hour and 45 minutes, I think, into today's video. And this could take a very long time. It could be stuck in a loop. It may never finish. It might finish 10 seconds after I end the video. Samsung, I mentioned Samsung had the 4 terabyte 990 NVMe. It's their very first 4 terabyte drive. NVMe drive. They wanted $344 for it on Amazon. I said, that's $100 too high. They're out of your mind if you're going to pay $344. Today, Samsung was selling the drive directly from Samsung.com for $223. $23,224. It's a pretty good price. I wouldn't worry if you missed the sale. I expect by Black Friday, that'll probably be its price. I think it's just overpriced because it's brand new. It's probably not selling well at $344, I expect. And they're probably a little more motivated to lower the price to be more competitive with drives of that caliber, like Western Digital. The Western Digital 4 terabyte 850 SN850X is probably around 239, and that's fair comparison for the Samsung drive, I think. And Samsung needs to be closer to that. At $344 price was insane. I hope none of you paid that. Josh Kinder says, how do you know it's even doing anything? Well, there's a couple of ways. One, the circle is going around, right? So that implies something's functioning, that we haven't frozen or locked up. If we have a hard drive LED, which I don't think we have, we could look to see if the light is coming on and off. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily indicate that you still could be in a loop, that it's like a record that's skipping. That's possible. So there's an uncertainty here where you have a decision to make. We give this ample time to finish. What is ample time to finish? Well, on a mechanical drive, and again, it depends on the make and model and size of the drive, it's going to vary. A drive like this, I would say between 15 minutes and 10 hours. If we go 10, 12 hours and we're still here, there's something seriously wrong. It's stuck. It's not moving past something. It should be able to get through a terabyte mechanical drive. In a best case, hard to estimate, but maybe 3 hours, because we're checking every single sector and there's a lot of them. If this was a bigger drive, it would take longer. But since if we assume it's working and if we assume it's progressing, which it appears to be, there's a chance if we leave it alone, it can identify the problem and correct it. But if we interrupt it, and this is our one opportunity to correct it, and we can't get that screen back up again, we have eliminated this potential for repair due to our impatience, which is going to cause us to take longer to fix the computer. So your impatience, haste makes waste, could cause you to have to invest more time than if you would have just given it a chance to finish. There has not been enough time. Everything that it's doing right now falls well within reason of the amount of time this should take. So it'd be too early to say that it's stuck, in my opinion, and in my experience of doing this on other machines. This does take a while. And it does tell you this might take over an hour to complete. Why do you think that's there? So given how this has never come up before, I'm excited to see it because I'm very hopeful that this will identify the problem. If it doesn't, I didn't extend any effort. All I had to do was leave it alone. I don't know why leaving something alone is so challenging for some people. But I would suggest you would not make a very good computer tech if you don't know how to be patient and to give something ample time to complete. And I certainly hope nobody would treat you that way. Sorry, buddy, you're taking too long. Even though you're making progress, maybe you're almost done. They're like, get out of here. You probably wouldn't like being treated that way. But I want the most non-invasive solution. If this fixes the problem, then everything will come back. Theoretically, potentially, computer boots just like it used to. All the applications are there. Everything is as it was. Because I've never serviced this computer, there's no backup of this computer. And they know that. I've made it clear. You want anything backed up, you put it on the NAS. We don't back up the workstations. We replace the photos. We don't replace the camera. So we can easily replace the camera. We go buy a new camera. That's not a problem. It's inconvenient to the end user to have to reset everything up, but so what? At the most, it's a few hours of time and they grumble the whole time they're doing it. And within 10 minutes of it all being done, they've moved on and they don't even bring it up anymore. It's not like it leaves scars and they're like, I can't believe I'm still suffering from what I had to do 3 weeks ago. They've forgotten all about it. They're just so happy the computer's working. Yeah, they very quickly forget about it. And it's oftentimes it's a worthwhile investment for the customer because things will work for a very long period of time after a fresh clean install, where you're unlikely going to have this problem again anytime soon. And things might even run faster than they did. There's often benefits they don't realize. Oh, this works faster now, you know. This is snappier. The desktop's cleaner now that I got rid of that stuff. I didn't realize all that stuff I was collecting, that it's gone and I don't miss it. And everything's just feels better. I've never heard of a computer, of a client who had to reset a computer, regret doing it. They're always happy they did it. They just hate doing it, and they despise the anxiety of having to do it. Oh, that's such a pain. Oh, it takes forever. Yeah, I know, but it's worth it. It's always worth it. But since the customer's first wish is to be non-invasive, then we're going to try to be non-invasive. And unless that we've given it the old college try, we are not successful. And the customer's like, I need the computer back. At that point, I'm like, okay, well, you've given me time. Now you're not giving me any more time. So here's our options. We reset it, or we just buy you a new computer and replace it, since you're going to have to set everything up again anyway. And maybe buy one of my computers, because they have a couple of my computers in their office. And when they told me they were having a computer problem, I said, is it one of my computers? And they said, no. I don't need to say anything else. So whatever they want to do is fine with me. But if we can get it back up and running and repaired, not reset, but repaired, they would sure appreciate that. And then they will eventually replace this computer when they're ready, versus replacing it because they have to. They'd much rather do that at a different time than right now, for their reasons. John Williams says, what would happen if you had a power outage while his HP is trying to finish checking the hard drive? It doesn't matter. It's not going to make it any worse if that's what you're asking. It simply won't complete the task. It won't cause any more damage. And then we'll move on from there. It's not a big deal. It's sort of like, what would happen if you got into a traffic accident on your way to wherever you're going? You deal with it. You know, hopefully it's not a major accident, but no matter what, you will deal with it because you have to. And that's what professionals do. Regardless of what happens, we see it through, and it might be messy or it might be clean. There might be some things in your control and some things out of your control, but no matter what, regardless of the unexpected events that happen, we don't need a crystal ball. We don't need to have anxiety about what might happen. There's a lot of things that might happen, and that line of thinking is not helpful for anybody. If you're so busy thinking about what might be, then you're not here in the present with us now. It would benefit me, if you were my employee, for you to be here now. I don't want you somewhere out in some false reality, imagining hypothetical situations that aren't likely going to happen. I need your thoughtful energy focused on this problem right now, as it is right now. Not what it was 3 days ago, not what it could be in the future. Right now is where I need you to be. And all of your daydreaming and wondering and anxiety is not helpful to anybody, and it accomplishes nothing. What happens will happen, and we will deal with it. This is what's happening now, so this is what we're dealing with now. If something different occurs in 10 minutes, then we'll deal with that actual issue, if there's an issue, when that happens. We don't have a crystal ball, and we cannot be prepared for the chaos of life. You're going to be in a very deep depression and have a level of anxiety through that type of thinking that isn't helpful to you or anybody around you, in my opinion. So thoughts like that, waste of time. It doesn't matter. No matter what happens, we'll deal with it. You can use your imagination to come up with any scenario you want to. We'll deal with it no matter what. But we're going to deal with reality. We're not dealing with imagination. That's a waste of time, in my opinion. Richard Palmentier says, building my own computer was well worth it, from Carey. Oh, I think it's awesome you built your own computer. And you did a good job. You showed me the pictures of it. You did good work. There's a feeling you get that nobody can give you. Nobody can share it with you on a video. You can't read about it. It's something you have to experience. There's a chemical adrenaline burst. There's a feeling of accomplishment. Nobody can give that to you. You have to do it yourself, and no one will ever know that feeling unless they do it. You'll never know and understand the balance of riding a bicycle. No one can ever explain it to you. You have to get on a bicycle and figure it out. In much the same way, swimming, people can explain it to you all day, but you really don't understand until you get in the water. As human beings, there are things that are beyond human expression. It's something we must experience. And if we deny these experiences, then we deny ourselves these rewards that nature gives us chemically in our brains. And the reward of accomplishment, it's a good one, that is a drug. And that's why I say, when you've built a computer for the first time, be warned, you're likely going to want to build another. There's a rush. There's a chemical release that nature gives you that feels amazing. And I'm not quite sure how else to get it other than to take on tasks of accomplishments so that you can feel that feeling. It's nobody can hand that to you. You can't go to Walmart and buy it. Boy, it sure would be good if you could, right? But no, it has to be earned. It's the only way you'll ever get it. You have to put the effort in. You make the sacrifice, you receive the reward. It's totally worth it. And if you've ever done it, I think you'd agree. So well done. Thomas Backenstow says, Windows 11 updates cause a boot loop. This is not Windows 11. This is Windows 10. It's not in a, I don't believe it's stuck. I think the amount of time it's taking at this point is to be expected, given the size of the mechanical drive. I would not let my impatience interfere with my repair. And I strongly advise you to adopt a level of patience, or don't get involved if you can't control your impulses. My strongest advice to you is, if you have impulse control issues, find something else to do. If you need to go grocery shopping, let this run and go grocery shopping. Stop staring at it. It's bothering you that much. Your interference, because of your impatience, will likely result in this taking longer. So if in fact this is locked up, and if your hunch is correct, we'll know that for sure after more time has passed. This is way too early to call that, in my experience. I will let this run 10 hours. If it continues after 10 hours and we haven't progressed past this point, then I'll likely shut it off. But given how important this particular test or repair process is to this specific problem, this does have the potential to fix this problem if you leave it alone and let it do its work. But if you interrupt it while it's working because you've convinced yourself that it's not working, you may have just completely obliterated this easy solution to the problem for no good reason other than impatience. Seems unjustifiable to me. Jim KJ3N says most PC techs have other systems to fix, so you let it run while doing other work. This is true. As I mentioned, a problem like this would be taken back to the lab and it would go on the bench where there are presumably other PCs running various tasks from virus scans or file scans. That can take a long time, even Windows updates. So you put this on the bench, you start this process, you move on to the next machine. It's absolutely true. As a hobbyist or enthusiast, you're likely only working on your one computer. And what you do to it is up to you. It only affects you. When you're dealing with a customer's computer and you're being held accountable and liable for that, and you have given the customer your word that you will try your best to save them from, a nuke and pave, and then you turn around and obliterate it because you're too impatient, you've done a great disservice to your customer. And from my opinion, you've lied to your customer, not been honest. But what you do to your own computer, have at it. That's your computer. It's your time. Have fun. I can't emphasize that difference enough. Ben Laird says, but what caused the disk errors? Well, Ben, that's what we call forensics. Now, if you want to get into data forensics, that's an entirely different IT task. So that is a specialty, and forensics are generally used in law enforcement. So if somebody is trying to destroy data to hide a crime, or they've locked their phone and they need to get into the phone to get at the data, or there's been a fire and we need to extract data from some device that was in the fire that may contain evidence to the cause of the fire, security camera footage that might be saved on a memory card, a death, a murder, cryptocurrency fraud, whatever it happens to be, including like $300 data recovery. That's considered forensics. Forensics is a whole nother ballgame. And forensics is likely a complete waste of time that you're not getting paid for. We don't care what caused the problem to occur initially. Your goal as an IT is to fix the problem. All right, get the computer back up and running. It is generally somebody else's job to fix what caused the problem if there's an issue that's starting to happen company-wide. Let's say, for example, there's an update that went out from the company's IT department that's causing a computer problem from a portion of people that are getting the update. So you as the IT tech, you are assigned a support ticket. You go to the customers and you identify the cause of the problem as this update. You roll the update back and the system's back up and running, and you report that. And then you get another help ticket and it's the same problem with the same solution, and you report that. You get another help ticket and it's the same problem with the same solution, and you report that. Well, the person who's in the administration part of the IT who approves those updates will then get that information and be told there's a problem with this update. Then they will do the forensics to identify what's happening, what's causing it, apply the fix, and redistribute the fix on their own, which in many cases shuts down a bunch of support tickets. So one day you're buried in support tickets and you're getting through them as best you can, rolling back. And then you go to work one day and all the support tickets that were waiting for you from the day before, they're gone because the company issued that update to everybody automatically, and all of those people that were suffering from before automatically got fixed. That's not your job. Your job is not the forensics part. So unless you're seeing a problem over and over and over again, you are wasting your time trying to figure out why something happened when it's likely never going to happen again. It's a waste. There's nothing to be benefited from that. So we don't do forensics. The only time we do forensics is if we have a repeatable problem that keeps occurring. If it happens a number of times within a certain period, a time frame, at that point, it's in our best interest to figure out what's causing it so we can not have to work so damn hard and keep repeating the same fix over and over. I have a number of examples I can give you about that that's happened in the real world from driver updates, just causing a nightmare of problems. And it starts out little. It starts out as a unique thing. And then through the introduction of more help tickets, you start to see it again and again and again. And it's like, okay, we have an epidemic and we need a vaccine. But we're not going to take the time to develop a vaccine for one person who got sick one time with something we've never seen, and nobody else has it, and nobody else is getting it. And we never see it again. What a complete waste of time. Zvi Manor wants to know if the hard drive light is blinking. This computer does not have a hard drive light, unfortunately. Not even on the motherboard. Nothing. Unfortunately, we have no indication of any. The only LED, this computer has one LED, and it's a power LED. This is a built to meet a certain price point PC. It's not a good PC. It's what you can get if you want to spend a certain amount of money. This is what you can get. And it worked great for a number of years. The problem is when they stop working, if they stop working, they can be very difficult and sometimes impossible to repair. Some of the components in here are proprietary. That power supply is not an industry standard. We might be able to go on to eBay and find one or not. And it'll likely be used that came out of another machine that failed, like a car that gets in a wreck might have a perfectly good transmission, right? If it gets in a front end accident, the transmission might be fine. The interior, we can junk out and part it out, all those parts that weren't affected by the crash. The fenders in the rear, the trunk lid, the hood, the glass on the window, on the doors, the back. There's a lot of good parts there. And there are people who will buy bad computers and do the same thing and say, well, this one's got a bad power supply, but a good motherboard, good CPU, good RAM, good hard drive, good front bezel, good optical drive. And they'll just break it all into parts and list it all on eBay. Especially with laptops, this is true. And so somewhere out there's probably somebody who's like, yeah, well, the motherboard died, but the power supply is good. And they'll list that power supply. And that's the only power supply that will fit likely in this case. And if you're lucky, it's cheap. But you can't just put any power supply in there. Like if you built your own system. If you built your own system, it likely would cost you more than this. But it would also likely never have had this problem. And if it did, it'd be easier to fix because you built it yourself with industry standard components versus some proprietary design built to meet a certain price point. It comes at a cost. It's just a cost different than money. It's a cost that occurs later. It's a cost of ownership versus a cost of buying it, acquiring it. So in my experience, if you build a machine yourself, you have a higher upfront cost, but your cost of ownership gets cheaper the longer you have it. So now if you've had a computer you've built for 8 years, your cost of ownership is dollars a day, maybe less than that, maybe pennies a day. If you buy a cheap computer like this and has a problem outside of warranty, it may cost more to fix it than what it cost you to buy it. And it's often then e-waste that you simply will buy a brand new machine because it was so inexpensive, it's not worth fixing. And if you buy a new one, you're instantly upgrading. You're not waiting for a repair to be done. And you're back up and running with a warranty and peace of mind. If anything happens during the warranty, it won't cost you anything. So a lot of people that buy computers at this level will quickly realize the cost of repairing them is not worth considering versus just buying another one with a warranty and not having to wait. You immediately get your solution. I can go to the store right now, and in 20 minutes, have a modern replacement for this for about whatever this costs, a few $100s, with a new warranty. It's a great temporary solution. And if you don't mind that and you want to, in the long run, you're going to spend more money than if you just built one yourself. Statistically likely. You'll buy 3 of these at $400 a piece. You'll spend $1,200 plus all the trouble of resetting it, going to get it, setting it up, unboxing it, getting ready to buy. Oh my God, it's a lot of work versus just building it right the first time with decent components and leaving it alone for the next 8 years. I don't know, your choice. Everybody chooses differently based on your values, based on how you perceive time, whether or not you're running a business with it. There's a lot of variables there. Richard Palmatier said, I had a senior moment and bought 2 cases. Well, build a second system. That's what I'd do. Or Vogel says, patience is okay, but a new PC is better for the client future-wise. Sometimes it's better to take the loss and move on. But if you're working for a client, that's not your decision. And well, you certainly, I would expect, make that recommendation. Believe me, that was discussed. The client's preference, not requirement, is that, look, person that uses this computer went on vacation for a week. They won't be back for a week. So you have a week. Like if we went and got a brand new computer today and put it in, it does them no good. There's still nobody there using it. So why don't you take that week, see if you can fix it? Because that's what we'd prefer right now. We do want to replace it later. We'd rather not replace it now. If it can be fixed without losing everything and having to restore everything, that's what we prefer. And I said, no problem. I'll give it my best shot. And here we are. So we're at, how long have we been on now? A little over 2 hours. So I think I like to keep these around 2 hours. And this could run a few more hours. It's really hard to say. But I definitely want to let this run. I do not want to interrupt it. If it reaches 10 o'clock tonight, my time, so that's a little over 6 hours from now. If it hasn't progressed from this point, I'm going to shut it off. And I expect when I shut it off, we'll be right back, same looping. It's possible it might come up with this again and want to start at 0. So, while we are offline, I would like to see if you believe you know the solution and you would like to share that with us in the comments section and your solution works, I will be happy to give you credit for that. 100% delighted and impressed by your skills. If you want to copy and paste Google searches, what makes you think that I haven't done that basic thing? But if you believe, you honestly believe that a very specific Google answer is the right answer, you want to post it and you want to stand behind that, put your reputation behind that, that's your choice. I'm happy to try it. If it's a reasonable thing that isn't going to potentially destroy the customer's data, if it's something safe, happy to try it. And maybe I'll be surprised. Wow, that worked. I'd be happy about that. So for all those people that say, I know the answer to this after the video's been posted, if you know the answer to this, put it in the comments section. If any of those answers turn out to be the working solution, there'll be a special prize in it for the person that gets it right. And mostly, I'll be impressed. So let's see what happens. And now I'm going to hand it over to you guys in the community. And I am hopeful to be impressed. I'm not expecting anybody to know the answer to this. I hope I'm wrong. And after a few days, if we don't get the right answer, we'll move forward from there. But I absolutely want to make sure that, you know, anybody that says that they knew the answer, but that didn't provide it to us during this time, they're full of crap if they do that after I provide the solution. So that's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks everybody for providing support, for hanging out with me in the chat and joining me on this. And it just goes to show real life situations that if you want to do this for a living, this is kind of what you can expect. This is an example of, you know, sometimes the problems are easy calls you get, you know, my computer screen, I have two screens and I got an update and my screen on the left is on the right and my screen on the right is on the left. How do I fix that? I love that call. I say you pick up the monitor on the left and you slide it over to the right, and you take the one on the right and you slide it over to the left. Okay, but isn't there a way you can go in the software and change it? Yes. Why don't we do that? Because the next time you get an update, you're going to call me again with the same, it's going to keep happening. If you simply move the screens. Now, if they say, well, I can't or won't move the screens for any reason, I say, take the cable, the HDMI or whatever cable you've got, the back of the monitor, and move it to the other monitor, and take that monitor's cable and move it to the other. Just reach behind it, pull the cable out, pop it in. This problem goes away forever. I love those calls. I love them. And then other calls you get are like this, where it's a little bit more complex. So, welcome to the life of a tech. It's always interesting. It's always very often different. I always say this job is either boring because it's a problem I've seen before, and you apply the fix and everybody thinks you're smart and you get all this praise, or it's frustrating because you have a problem you haven't seen before. And you're like, after I've been doing this all these years, how could I have never have seen this problem before? But that ultimately keeps it interesting, at least for me. Having that variety in there keeps it from getting boring. And then when you add on the challenges to each individual client, and the restrictions that they might give you in time or data, things of that nature, that continues to pile on to the challenge to be overcome. And I do enjoy these challenges. I like figuring these puzzles out. And I enjoy it so much, I want to share it with you guys. And it's so frustrating to have somebody say they already knew the answer to the puzzle after I've already provided it. So that's why we're doing it different this time. I'm calling BS on everybody who's ever done that. Every single person who's ever done that, I think, is a complete liar. And I would love to be proven wrong. And this video is that opportunity to do that. Can't emphasize that enough. Prove me wrong. Please. Thank you to... Wrong mouse. I keep grabbing the wrong mouse. Some shouts out to people who have contributed during today's broadcast. Thank you to Aaron A. and Planet Cryos. Thank you to Red Dragon. Thank you to Mats Olov, Peter VZ, Planet Cryos again, Peter VZ again, Planet Cryos renewing his membership now for 17 months. That's awesome. Thank you, Planet Cryos. Gregory Howard, thank you for your super chat. Elijah Dickens renewed their membership also for 17 months now. Thank you, Elijah. Ben Laird contributed in super chat. And so did Planet Cryos again. Chris Johnson renewed his membership, as did Dwayne Blackwelder. Thanks, guys. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thank you to David Graham and Paul O'Brien for your super chats, as well as Paul O'Brien's earlier Amazon gift card. Thank you for that. And then if I check my email, which I have failed to do this whole show, let's see if I missed what I've missed. Richard Palmentier sent a $30 Amazon gift card. Right on. Thank you, Richard. Bull142 sends a $20 Amazon gift card. Thank you to Bull142. And $25 from Luke Greenia, which says, a little thank you for you and Marlena. Very kind of you. Thank you. I think that's it. Oh, New Wave Toys has a new USB arcade vending machine that looks like a cigarette machine. Wow, that's politically incorrect. Okay, that's it for the emails. And I think that'll wrap it up for today's video. And we'll look forward to the follow-ups on what's going on with the progress on this and whether or not anybody has provided a workable solution for which full credit will be given. And I hope to be able to announce that. That'll be something that, I won't say it's never happened before, but sometimes when it happens during live videos, and then it's hard to establish who was the original person that provided the help. So this time it's a little more controlled, so I can identify those people more accurately. And again, I would be very impressed. So it's on you guys. Essential Working Too Hard with a $5 super chat said, I have no clue, but it's a great stream as always. NK Cordius Technology with $2 says, I've arrived late, so I'm paying my rental fee. Well, thanks guys again for supporting the channel. Good luck to everybody who wants to provide a solution. I hope you're right. I really do. I'm on your side. I really want you to be right. I'll look forward to your comments. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.